On May 7th, 2021, a single password brought America's East Coast to a standstill. It wasn't a password to a nuclear silo or a top-secret government server. It was an old, forgotten password for a company that moves 2.5 million barrels of fuel every single day. In less than 2 hours, a criminal group halfway across the world used it to steal 100 gigabytes of data and hold the energy supply for 13 states hostage. This is the story of how one tiny crack in security caused a nationwide crisis, and why it's a warning we can't afford to ignore. Most people had never even heard of the Colonial Pipeline before it was all over the news. And that's by design. It's a 5,500-mile-long pipeline, an invisible circulatory system running from Texas all the way to New Jersey. It carries nearly half of all the gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel consumed on the entire East Coast. It's the silent underground giant that powers your car, heats your home, and gets planes in the air. For decades, it operated flawlessly in the background of American life. Until it didn't. The attack started quietly. There was no big explosion, no blaring alarm. It began with a single employee's login credentials for a virtual private network, or VPN. A VPN is basically a secure tunnel that lets you connect to a company's network from anywhere in the world, something that became incredibly common during the pandemic. The problem was, this specific password had been compromised in a previous data breach, completely unrelated to Colonial. It was floating around on the dark web. So the attackers, a group known as Darkside, got their hands on it. They tried the password, and it worked. They were in. Now this is where a simple, everyday piece of technology should have stopped them cold. It's called multi-factor authentication, or MFA. You use it every day. It's that extra code you get on your phone when you log into your bank or your email. It's a second line of defense that proves you are who you say you are, even if someone has your password. It's a digital deadbolt. But on this critical VPN account, that deadbolt was missing. There was no MFA. With just one stolen password, the door to one of America's most vital pieces of infrastructure was wide open. Once inside, the attackers didn't waste a second. In just 2 hours, they moved silently through Colonial's network and siphoned out 100 gigabytes of sensitive company data. Think of it like thieves breaking into a bank, but before blowing the vault, they spent 2 hours photocopying every single document in the filing cabinets. They had the data, but they weren't done. What they did next would plunge millions of people into chaos. After stealing the data, Darkside deployed their real weapon, ransomware. This malicious software spread like a virus through Colonial's business network, encrypting everything it touched. Critical files for accounting, billing, and coordinating shipments were suddenly locked behind an unbreakable wall of code. The company could see their files, but they couldn't open them. On each screen, a message appeared, a digital ransom note. Faced with the crippled network and the terrifying possibility of the ransomware spreading to the pipeline's operational controls, Colonial's leadership made a drastic decision. They proactively shut down the entire pipeline, all 5,500 miles of it. The circulatory system of the East Coast had just gone into cardiac arrest. The ransom demand was for 75 bitcoins, which at the time was worth about $4.4 million. The attackers were using a strategy called double extortion. It wasn't just pay us to get your files back. It was pay us or we will leak all 100 gigabytes of your sensitive data to the entire world. This put Colonial in an impossible position. Do you pay millions to criminals, funding their next attack and encouraging more of this behavior? Or do you refuse and risk a catastrophic data leak while the entire East Coast fuel supply remains shut down indefinitely? CEO Joseph Blount made the controversial call. He authorized the payment. He later testified that he saw it as the right thing to do for the country, a necessary evil to get the fuel flowing again as quickly as possible. The $4.4 million was sent. But paying the ransom isn't a magic button. It doesn't instantly fix everything. First, the decryption tool the hackers provided was incredibly slow. So slow, in fact, that Colonial ended up using its own backups to restore the system faster. And second, the real-world damage was already done. News of the shutdown spread like wildfire, and with it, panic. Suddenly, gas stations across the southeast were mobbed. Images of cars snaking for miles around the block flooded the news. Prices at the pump skyrocketed. People started panic buying, hoarding gas in any container they could find, creating dangerous situations and making the shortages even worse. For the first time, a cyber attack wasn't some abstract threat on a computer screen. It was a real-world crisis that left people stranded, unable to get to work, and genuinely afraid. The governors of 4 states declared a state of emergency. And here's where the story gets really strange. The attackers themselves, DarkSide, released a public statement. They claimed they were an apolitical group, that their goal was just to make money, and that they had no intention of creating problems for society. It was like a bank robber apologizing for the traffic jam his getaway caused. This revealed something crucial about the modern world of cybercrime. DarkSide operated as ransomware as a service. They built the malicious tools, but they licensed them out to other criminals who would then carry out the attacks in exchange for a cut of the profits. It's possible the affiliate who attacked Colonial didn't realize the sheer scale of chaos they would unleash. They hit a target that was far bigger than they intended. The pipeline was shut down for 6 agonizing days. Even after it was restarted on May 13th, it took several more days for the supply chain to return to normal. The US government wasn't sitting idle. The Department of Justice launched a task force to track the payment, and in a stunning move, they managed to follow the blockchain trail and seize back over 63 bitcoins, about $2.3 million of the ransom. But because the price of Bitcoin had dropped since the payment, Colonial still suffered a significant financial loss. The Colonial Pipeline attack was a brutal wake-up call. It exposed just how fragile our most critical infrastructure is. The entire crisis was caused by a single reused password and the lack of a basic security feature that cost next to nothing to implement. It showed how inadequate network segmentation could allow an attacker to move freely once they were inside. And it highlighted a massive gap in government oversight for the cybersecurity of private companies that run these essential services. In the wake of the attack, things began to change. The US government issued new directives for pipeline operators, mandating stronger cybersecurity measures. A new law was passed, the Cyber Incident Reporting for Critical Infrastructure Act, which now legally requires companies in critical sectors to report major cyber attacks within 72 hours, and to report any ransom payments within just 24 hours. The secrecy that once allowed these attacks to happen in the shadows was being stripped away. The Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack wasn't the first major cyber attack, and it certainly won't be the last. But it marked a turning point. It was the moment the digital threat became undeniably physical. It showed us that the code running on a server thousands of miles away can determine whether you can fill up your car tomorrow. The key takeaway isn't just about one company's failure. It's about recognizing that in our interconnected world, security is no longer optional. A single forgotten password, a single missing security update can have consequences that ripple across an entire nation. The battle for our digital security is happening right now, and it's a battle we all have a stake in. Thanks for watching. This story is a powerful example of how the digital and physical worlds have collided. If you found this interesting, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. And let me know in the comments, what other major cyber attacks or tech stories do you want to see covered? See you in the next one.